Most of you aren't subscribed. Make sure to subscribe, as it helps out the channel. Without further ado, skipping ahead a month, Kelvin is seen training with his party in a nearby forest, proud that Ephil has decided to take on the role of an archer. On top of that, Ephil had taken up sewing, and as a result she has been able to enhance her current battle-maid outfit with enchantments. As Gerald and Kelvin engage a massive monster, Ephil begins charging up a powerful fire arrow, releasing and striking the creature, completely incinerating it. With Kelvin heading back to the guild to submit his quest, Ainge is impressed, clarifying that Kelvin only needs to complete one more quest before he can take the rank up exam to be officially rank A. But since Ephil is also considered an adventurer, Kelvin reminds Ephil that she'll also be reaching rank B soon, having reached rank C recently. As Ainge and Kelvin look at each other, they both think about how skilled Ephil is, since she needed to take a rank up exam to be in rank C. During her rank up exam, she had cloaked herself with invisibility, throwing her examiner off, and before the examiner could track Ephil, Ephil fired an arrow at the examiner's head, ending the exam. Ainge reiterates how the examiner was a veteran adventurer, and to have Ephil defeat him so quickly is impressive. Changing topics, Ainge tells Ephil about a new sweet store that opened up, asking if she would like to visit the store together. Seeing Ainge and Ephil so close, Kelvin can't help but feel happy, but is suddenly asked by Ephil to join them. With some advice from Ainge, Kelvin accepts Ephil's offer, agreeing to meet up tomorrow. The next day, Kelvin waits in the agreed-upon spot, spotting various couples nearby, wondering if he is on a date. Brushing the naughty thoughts aside, he spots Ainge, complimenting her cute looks. But Ainge wonders where Ephil is, prompting Kelvin to tell her Ephil will be late, as she is still dressing up. Hearing this, Ainge realizes the Ephil will be competition, asking that Kelvin relax and treat each other comfortably. Not realizing what Ainge meant, Kelvin agrees, but the two are interrupted by Ephil, having finally arrived. With a single glance, Kelvin becomes frozen in Ephil's presence, but soon snaps out of it complimenting Ephil's beauty. On top of that, Ainge gets jealous, pinching Ephil for being so attractive. As the trio finally make their way to the sweets store, they sit down and order an assortment of food, only for Ephil to offer to feed Kelvin. Seeing this, Ainge teases Kelvin for being so close with Ephil, drawing attention from onlookers, who grow jealous that Kelvin is currently hanging out with two beautiful women. Hearing all the gossip around him, Kelvin attempts to set things straight, but no one believes him, putting Kelvin in a sour mood. As the girls indulge in the food, a person's voice is suddenly heard nearby, but out of nowhere their assortment of food is kicked to the ground. Two knights order everyone to bow their heads, as they are currently in the presence of the third prince Trison. Asking to know who Trison is, Kelvin learns that Trison belongs to a military family, meaning he's of a high noble status. Seeing the girls with Kelvin, Trison and his knights demand that Kelvin hand over the girls, and in exchange, he'll let Kelvin go without any harm. Hearing the men's disgusting demands, Kelvin blasts the two knights into a nearby wall, terrifying Trison. Binding Trison in place, Kelvin demands to know why a noble is here, but when Trison refuses to answer, Kelvin brings Trison to his knees. Now willing to answer, Trison states that he's heard rumors of a powerful adventurer in town, and that he knows his knights are weak, so he's here to hire a powerful adventurer that'll serve him. Realizing that he is the one Trison is searching for, Kelvin declines the spoiled noble's offer, knocking him out, leaving the scene. Elsewhere in the Holy Empire, a priestess, Colette, is seen calling upon Melfina, showing Melfina the adventurers and how strong they're getting. Happy to hear things are running smoothly, Melfina tells Colette of a prophecy, intentionally having Colette guide the heroes away from the town Kelvin is currently staying at. Just as Melfina finishes up and leaves, the heroes arrive, asking about this new prophecy. That night, Kelvin and Ephil once again share a bed, both facing away from one another. Thanking Kelvin for saving her earlier, Kelvin tells her that it's a given that he'll protect her forever, but hearing this Ephil wonders if Kelvin truly loves her as a person or as a slave. As Ephil begins to break down at the thought of her past, Kelvin promises that she'll never have to go back to the life of isolation, as he'll always be by her side moving forward. As they both embrace, Kelvin notes how he should think about getting separate rooms. The next morning, Kevlin and all his summons begin looking through this world's heroes' stats, thanks to Melfina, who had recently learnt of the hero's progress. Frustrated, Kelvin reveals that the heroes are not even level 100 yet, and they've been here for around a year, wondering what they've been doing all this time. Asking Melfina if the heroes will be able to defeat the Demon King in time, Melfina says this is actually a normal rate for the heroes to be growing, it's just that Kelvin and his gang are growing substantially faster than anyone. Happy to hear that, Kelvin announces his new blacksmithing skill, unveiling a newly crafted rank staff. On top of that, Gerald has acquired a new shield and cape, and Ephil has created a new sage robe for Kelvin. Suddenly Claire knocks on the door, telling Kelvin that he's being summoned by the guild. Sitting down with the guildmaster, Kelvin learns of a demon sighting in a rank D cave. Not normal as demons, dragons and angels are all the rarest creatures in this world. The guildmaster tells Kelvin that the demon's strength is unknown, apologizing for asking Kelvin to take on such a dangerous quest. Before Kelvin can speak his mind, the guildmaster mentions how there was a prince that visited town recently, but was assaulted, hinting at the fact that because of Kelvin, the guildmaster has been working tirelessly to keep relations with the nobles clean. Seeing as he has to make up for assaulting the noble, Kelvin accepts his quest, terrified about what the guildmaster knows. As the gang head towards the demon sighting, the gang greet the adventurer in charge of containing the creature in the cave, taking Kelvin and his party to the hidden passage. With Ephil lighting the way, the gang begin making their way through the cave, throwing Kelvin off, as he doesn't sense any monsters nearby. As they stop in front of a massive door, they all sense the demon's presence, but also a far more potent creature inside. As Kelvin opens the giant doors, he spots a demon girl strung up, but turns to face another demon, who introduces themselves as an archdemon, Victor. Hearing Victor as an archdemon, Kelvin can't help but get excited, but first he demands to know who the demon girl is. Victor casts a barrier around the room, announcing that the girl was the former demon lord Gustav's daughter. Wondering why Victor is so willingly telling them all of this, Victor reveals that he plans to break the demon girl's seal, but only a human strong enough can break her seal. Lunging at Kelvin, Gerald is able to block Victor's advances, but is confused when Victor reveals he has the ability to copy the skills of anyone he devours. But Victor adds that, the more the target knows about his abilities, the stronger Victor becomes. Hearing this, Kelvin deduces that Victor is planning to eat a powerful human, free the demon girl, and devour her, gaining the power to become the Demon King himself. Confirming Kelvin's suspicions, Victor wonders why Kelvin is grinning so much, but Kelvin tells Victor that he's simply so happy to be able to fight a rank S monster. Happy to see that Kelvin is so fired up to fight, Victor raises his arm casting a black magic spell, Hades' army, cursing and creating some undeads. Annoyed that Victor is capable of dark magic, Kelvin notes how their numbers advantage had immediately been removed, bracing himself as Victor has his undead attack. Quickly scanning them, Kelvin sees that the undead's levels are all rank B and above, stating that it would be best to kill them before they overwhelm his party. Casting several wind slashes, Kelvin is able to clear a wave of undeads, but more undeads simply take the place of the first wave, swarming not only Kelvin, but Gerald and Ephil as well. Impressed at the persistent waves, Gerald carves a path to Victor, asking that Kelvin assist with any undeads that he may miss. As our duo make their way towards Victor, Victor can't help but compliment their movements and synergy, wondering how Kelvin is so young but has so much battle experience. Ignoring Victor's praises, Kelvin demands that Victor bring out his next trick, catching Victor's attention, as Victor confirms that Kelvin is enjoying facing off against his techniques. Matching Kelvin's energy, Victor slams the ground, creating a smokescreen. With Gerald and Kelvin now on high alert, they both track Victor's presence, with Gerald suddenly forced to block one of Victor's strikes, noting how Victor is moving strangely, as he's moving in and out of the ground. Knowing this, Kelvin is able to dodge Victor's sudden attacks, but Victor changes strategies, encasing his palms with dark magic, blasting and knocking Gerald away. Seeing this, Kelvin notes how Gerald's armor is good against physical attacks, but weak to magic attacks, making Gerald a bad matchup for Victor at close range. Before Kelvin can draw Victor away from Gerald, Kelvin is barely able to dodge one of Victor's attacks, having used the smoke to hide the fact that Victor had extended his arm to sneak up on Kelvin. As Kelvin jumps back from Victor's arm, he realizes that he had fallen for Victor's trap, unintentionally moving closer to Victor to be devoured. Immediately calling for Clotho to stick onto and bind Victor, Kelvin reveals that he had intentionally hidden Clotho just for a sneak attack of his own, immediately casting a binding spell, right as Victor breaks free from Clotho's grips. Happy to see Victor is binded, Kelvin and Gerald both spot Victor beginning to break free from the binding spell, both making preparations to strike Victor down. As Kelvin enchants Gerald's sword, Gerald charges towards the stationary Victor, but Victor smirks, as he has extended his arm once again through the smoke, ready to strike Kelvin down from behind. Having read Victor's intentions, Kelvin calls for Ephil to reveal herself, throwing Victor off, as Ephil has an invisibility spell that even he couldn't detect. As Ephil charges up a fire arrow, she releases it in Victor's direction, forcing him to retract his extended arm, just to block the arrow from striking him down. With Victor distracted, Gerald had made his way into the striking zone, easily cleaving off one of Victor's arms, only to immediately retreat back to Kelvin's position. Impressed that Kelvin and his party had been able to do so much damage to him, Victor admits that he had underestimated them, but Victor immediately begins casting a dark magic spell, encasing himself with a dark cloud. Knowing that Victor is attempting to regenerate and power up, Kelvin orders to attack Victor, prompting Kelvin to lead with an earth spell, only to have Ephil shoot a fire arrow at Victor's shadowy form. Next, Gerald slashes the air, creating a projectile that lands cleanly on Victor, but it's too late as Victor has officially powered up. With Victor immediately dashing towards them, Kelvin orders Gerald to focus on defense, intercepting and halting Victor's advances. With his new powered-up body, Victor easily knocks Gerald aside, but Ephil provides backup, firing projectiles and working together with Gerald to distract Victor long enough for Kelvin to get into position. From above, Kelvin casts a flame spell, drawing Victor's attention, allowing Clotho to move in close enough, unleashing a barrage of failed blacksmithing weapons that Kelvin had created and stored in Clotho. Next up, Kelvin, Ephil and Clotho all simultaneously blast Victor with their most powerful spell, but instead of dodging, Victor mysteriously tanks the blast. As the cave begins to crumble due to their battle, a huge rock falls from the ceiling, heading towards the demon girl's positioning. Seeing this, Kelvin is unable to react to save her, but is surprised when Victor himself protects the demon girl. As the smoke clears, Kelvin and his party spots Victor bleeding out on the floor, admitting defeat. As final words, Kelvin states that he knows Victor had never planned to eat the demon girl, asking why Victor lied to him. Victor reveals that he needed Kelvin to fight him seriously, and that Victor is in fact the assigned caretaker of the demon girl, given the role by the previous demon king himself. Flashing back 700 years ago, we see Victor training the demon girl, teaching her how to infuse her strikes with her magic. It's revealed that the demon girl's name is Sarah, but Sarah wonders why she is forbidden from leaving her home, as she's jealous her father, Gustav the demon king, always gets to explore the world. Hearing this, Victor thinks about how Gustav had intentionally hidden Sarah's existence, fearing his enemies would use her against him. Sadly, due to Gustav's protectiveness of Sarah, Sarah had no friends, as she was never allowed to leave or interact with anyone outside her home. Eventually, the heroes finally made it to Gustav's home. The Demon King had prioritized the safety of his daughter, assigning Victor to protect her forever, but just in case Gustav had sealed away Sarah's demon powers as a way to conceal her connection with the Demon King himself. Having been hiding and protecting Sarah all this time in this cave, Victor had hoped the heroes of the world would die off and never be resurrected, but sadly his wish never came true. With his last breath, Victor asks that Kelvin accept Sarah as one of his summons, catching Kelvin off guard as Victor had figured out his party members are actually his summons. As Victor passes away, Kelvin makes his way over to Sarah, breaking her seal, and accepting her into his party. As Kelvin and his gang make it out of the cave, Kelvin is able to make up an excuse regarding Sarah's existence, even concealing her demon horn and wings with an item Victor had left behind to help conceal Sarah's true identity. As the gang recoup on a mountain, Kelvin checks the stats of Gerald, impressed that Gerald has evolved into an abyssal knight, an S-rank creature. Turning to Sarah, Kelvin asks if she has calmed down and accepted her situation, which Sarah says she's still trying to take everything in, but first they all return to town. Since Sarah has never been outside, Sarah is immediately overjoyed to see human culture, running and checking out the stores in town. Asking that Ethel and Gerald watch over Sarah for a bit, Kelvin heads to the guild to sort out and explain to the guild how he was able to defeat the demon in the cave. After chatting with the guild, Kelvin had officially been promoted to rank A and was able to hide Sarah's existence, but was pissed to hear that the guild had intended to capture and use the demon for future experimentations. Returning to his inn, Kelvin is surprised to see everyone there, all ready to celebrate Kelvin's promotion to rank A. As everyone parties hard, they all eventually knock out, but Kelvin in the middle of the night wakes up, wondering where Sarah must have gone. Outside, Sarah sits alone, staring at the moon, reminiscing about her time with Victor and how he had promised to show her the outside world. Since Victor is no longer with her, Sarah promises to explore the world, asking for Victor to watch over her as she lives her new life. As Sarah returns back to the inn, Kelvin is seen overhearing Sarah's ideals, promising to give Sarah the life that Victor and her father wanted for her. Several days later, Kelvin announced that his blacksmithing skill is now rank S and so is Ethel's sewing skill, meaning they'll both be able to craft more powerful equipment. First, Kelvin gives Sarah Erendite a pair of rank S gloves to allow Sarah to engage in close combat. Next, Ethel gives Sarah some rank S armor, called Queen's Terror, which Sarah appreciates as the armor's name sounds cool. Knowing that Victor meant a lot to Sarah, Kelvin reveals to Sarah that he had used Victor's armor to help craft the gloves, making her feel as if Victor is fighting beside her. Finally, Kelvin gives Gerald the Sword of Dainsleif, a rank S sword that has the exact dimensions of Gerald's previous blade, but with better stats. Thanking Kelvin for the gifts, Sarah wonders why Kelvin and Ethel don't have any upgrades, but Kelvin smirks, telling Sarah that they do have upgrades, but they'll only show the others when they fight their next big monster. Having slaved away for several days, upgrading his party's equipment, Kelvin uses Clotho as a pillow, beginning to drift asleep. Before Kelvin falls asleep, Ethel asks if Kelvin would like anything to eat, but Kelvin unconsciously whispers that he wants rice. With everyone in his party wondering what rice is, Kelvin sits up, realizing that this world doesn't even have the bare essentials for food, compared to his previous life. The next day, the gang are seen traveling by carriage, passing by a gorgeous river, which catches Sarah's attention. Having never been outside before, Sarah can't help but be amazed by the amazing scenery, which gives Kelvin the idea to go fishing. When Sarah asks to know what fishing is, Kelvin states that once they reach the country of Turai, he'll show Sarah what fishing is. Kelvin reminds the gang that their destination is the water country of Turai, a country near the ocean. Traveling there, Kelvin gets to keep his promise and show Sarah the outside world, but at the same time, he can figure out a way to grow rice. Apparently Turai is meant to have something similar to rice, and it was quite easy to leave town, after speaking with Leo the guildmaster. During the carriage ride, Kelvin thinks about how it doesn't feel the same without Melfina with them. Flashing back, one night whilst Kelvin and other adventurers were celebrating and drinking, Kelvin had awoken in the middle of the night, only to have a chat with Melfina. During their chat, Kelvin learns that it might be impossible to officially summon and see Melfina's true form, since she is a god, but she reveals that there might be a workaround if she uses one of her avatars. Wondering about Melfina's avatar, Kelvin learns that Melfina can possess and become these so-called avatars, hiding the fact that she is a god. Excited at the thought that she may be finally able to show Kelvin her true form, Melfina disappears, hoping to return soon. Spotting a mini boat floating down the river, Sarah asks if she could ride it, but Kelvin says they'll do that next time, as Ethel butts in, asking Kelvin about a section of the book she's reading. A little longer later, Sarah sits up, asking Kelvin if he can sense some people watching them, prompting Kelvin to tell his party to not act just yet. Just then, a random woman runs out and blocks the carriage's path, announcing themselves as Black Wind. Wondering who they are, the carriage driver explains that the Black Wind are a bunch of bandits that have become famous recently near the town of Turai. Immediately scanning the bandits' stats, Kelvin realizes that the bandits are no more than level 30, allowing Sarah to have some fun and play with the bandits, but Kelvin forbids Sarah from using her gloves. Still pumped to fight, Sarah hops out of the carriage, greeting the bandits, but when they lay eyes on Sarah, the bandits begin to mock and underestimate Sarah. Blowing back one of the bandits, the leader of the bandits orders her men to rush Sarah, but Sarah also knocks them all back. Sensing someone from behind, Sarah catches the hammer of a huge bandit, shocking the bandit's leader, as Kelvin reveals that Sarah is level 75. Finishing up the leader's henchman, Sarah approaches the leader, teasing and tying everyone up, all whilst she compliments her own strength. Seeing Kelvin and his party relaxed, the bandits' leader speaks up, warning them that their leader is level 70 in an attempt to scare Kelvin and his gang, but this only makes Sarah and Kelvin more interested to meet this person. Finally making it to town, Kelvin notes how this town reminds him of Japan, but more importantly the sea next to the town is utterly gorgeous. As Sarah stares out into the sea, she's sad to not experience this moment with Victor, but still asks if Kelvin is willing to teach her. Promising her that he will, Kelvin states that they must turn in the bandits that they captured. Heading to the town's guild, the Toraj's guildmaster, Mist, personally thanks Kelvin and his party for capturing the bandits. Sitting down, Kelvin and his members introduce themselves, asking if Guildmaster Leo had told Mist about them. Guildmaster Mist says that Leo has only been talking to her about Kelvin's amazing feats, revealing that Leo and her were originally adventurers in the same party. Getting down to business, Kelvin states that after interrogating the bandits, they learnt that the boss of the bandits, Kristoff, was originally an adventurer from the town of Trison, having personally defeated the Black Wind bandits themselves. But after a while, Kristoff took over the Black Wind bandits, becoming their leader and began kidnapping people. Since Kristoff's evil doings are still unknown to many, he's still considered a trusted adventurer, therefore attacking him will cause some political issues. Instead, Mist suggests that Kelvin and the gang think of an alternative, but Kelvin secretly thinks about how weak Kristoff is, and how unmotivated he is to hunt Kristoff down. Suddenly, Kelvin senses 4 powerful beings nearby, asking Sarah if she senses them as well, realizing that the 4 heroes are coincidentally in town. Getting an idea, Kelvin announces that he'll get the heroes to take down Kristoff. Calling the heroes to her office, Guildmaster Mist asks the heroes to assist with a special quest, having been told to do so by Kelvin. Toya, the leader of the heroes, accepts the offer, but the other heroes question whether they should even be wasting time, as they've been instructed to head to the Empire of Risia by the goddess Melfina. Elsewhere in a dungeon, 2 bandits guard a cell, containing captured people. With one of the bandits entering the cell, he stops in front of a young girl and her mother, demanding for them to come with him. But before he can do anything weird, Kelvin and his party arrive, immediately knocking out the 2 bandits, before they can even react. With the captured people now safe, we cut over to Kristoff, discussing how he's heard reports of his underlings slowly being captured, meaning that his and his party's evil doings may be discovered. Just then they hear a knock on the door, asking whoever to come in, but instead, Kelvin, Gerald and Sarah all rush in. Seeing Kelvin's party so strong, Kristoff gets fired up, ready to face Kelvin, but instead Kelvin states that Kristoff is nothing more than a pawn to him. Cutting to the heroes, we see that they've made it into the same dungeon, cautiously exploring the place. Toya asks Setsuna to scan the area, but Setsuna can only report that there are many people nearby, unable to detect the people's power, as they are quite strong. As the 4 stop in front of a door, they all ready themselves, rushing in, only to spot a huge slime guarding the captured people. Believing that the slime is evil, Toya prepares to attack Clotho, but a little girl stops him, explaining that Clotho belongs to the person that saved them. Apologizing for the misunderstanding, Toya introduces himself and his party to everyone, asking Nana, the tamer of their group, to talk to Clotho. Nana learns that Clotho has been placed here to guard the captured, shocking everyone, as someone is able to summon such a powerful slime. Rushing ahead to meet this person, the heroes enter a room, noticing Kristoff and his party are all knocked out, wondering if Kristoff was the one that summoned Clotho. But suddenly Toya senses a disturbing presence, heading deeper into the room, only to spot Kelvin and his party waiting for them. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like and comment.